Welcome back to the deep dive. We're looking at real-time transcripts and recordings from CNN, ABC, NBC, all from the morning of September 11th, 2001.
Exactly. It's the raw broadcast record of history as it unfolded. We're going to trace that single Tuesday morning from its, completely routine start to its terrifying, world-altering climax.
So our mission today is really to recreate that atmosphere, to track that minute-by-minute shift as professional broadcasters, air traffic controllers, just tried to make sense of the unbelievable.
Yeah, that sense of cognitive dissonance. That's what we're trying to capture, the sheer shock of it all.
Okay, so let's set the scene, because the first thing that jumps out from the pre-8.0 a.m. sources is just this suffocating sense of normality.
Oh, completely. It is the definition of the calm before the storm. I mean, the networks were focused on the most banal, everyday things.
Like the weather.
The weather. They're talking about tropical depression number 7.
Right, and they make a point to say it has not been named yet and appears no threat to land at this time.
It's almost cheerful. The biggest concern is maybe some rain on a few beaches later in the week.
And the local news in D.C. is the same. I mean, the big headlines are about Fairfax County School accreditation.
And police searching for some petty theft suspects.
Yeah.
It's the stuff of any normal Tuesday. There was even a story about crews installing equipment to track a gasoline leak from, like, a decade earlier.
That's the baseline. That's the world we were living in at 7:30 in the morning. These were comfortable, manageable problems.
But nationally, the big story, the one that wasn't about politics, was Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. His potential return to the NBA with the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, he was quoted as saying he's doing it for the love of the game. And this wasn't just a side story. This was like the national water cooler topic.
And CNN actually ran a poll on it.
They did. Do you think Michael Jordan should return to the NBA? And get this, 66% of people who responded said no.
Wow.
I mean, just think about that. The amount of collective energy, the cultural bandwidth being spent on that question.
Yeah.
That the most pressing national debate, the sheer innocence of that is just staggering in hindsight.
And the ads really hammer it home. They're a perfect snapshot of that domestic, consumer-focused culture.
What did we have? Uncle Ben's mini bowls.
Cheeseburger and pepperoni pizzeria flavors, promising convenience.
Flonasers for your allergies.
Yeah.
Multi-symptom relief.
And Conseco retirement products.
Right, telling you to secure your future and step up. I mean, the whole broadcast is this blanket of reassurance that your future is predictable, it's manageable.
So that's the scene, 7:46 a.m. Eastern Time. A typical Tuesday, documented right down to the allergy medicine commercials.
And we really need that context, that deep, deep sense of normalcy to understand the speed and the totality of the shock that's coming.
So from the broadcast booth, let's shift to the world of air traffic control. Because while all this is happening, the machinery of air travel is already starting to grind towards disaster. This is phase 1, the first signs of trouble.
Yeah, the source material takes us right into the ATC transcripts at around 7:59 a.m., and it's all completely routine.
Just normal chatter.
Totally normal. The controller is talking to American 11 Heavy, a Boeing 767 out of Boston Logan, heading for LAX, just guiding it, telling it to hold position. And at almost the same time, United 175 gets its pushback approval. It's the system working exactly like it should.
But then just a few minutes later, that flow just stops. Specifically with American 11, what's the first thing ATC notices?
It's silence, which is always the first sign of trouble in aviation. The controller tells American 11 to turn right, climb to 29,000 feet. Standard stuff.
And nothing.
Nothing. Dead air. They try again. American 11, how do you hear the sender? Still nothing. And that's when you get that first chilling note in the log. He will not respond to me now.
Now, for those of us who aren't pilots, why isn't the first thought just a radio failure? Why does the suspicion ramp up so quickly?
That's a great question, and it's really key. Because it wasn't just the radio. At the same time they lost communication, the plane's transponder signal went dead.
And the transponder is what tells them who the plane is, its altitude, all that data.
Exactly. To lose both your primary communication and your transponder at the same time on a giant 767 at the start of his flight, that's a massive red flag. It's not a simple glitch. It screams deliberate intervention.
So what are the controllers actually seeing on their radar screens at that point?
All that rich data is gone. The flight number, the altitude, it all vanishes. American 11 just becomes what they call a primary target.
Just a blip.
Just a raw blip on the screen. And that's when the internal chatter escalates. You see them say they suspect there's someone in the cockpit that's taken over. They're frantically broadcasting on emergency frequencies, trying to reach the company, getting nothing back.
And the blip itself is moving erratically. It's not on its flight path.
Right. Instead of heading west, it's banking southwest towards Albany. The plane is now a rogue element. It's ignoring instructions, it's not communicating, and the professionals in that room realize in that moment that they have completely lost control of that aircraft.
And this is where this story becomes just intensely personal and horrifying. Because the panic wasn't just in the control tower. We have the transcript from the American Airlines emergency line.
Yeah. This part of the source material it's genuinely difficult to read. It's a specialist in a Raleigh reservation center, Lydia Gonzalez, monitoring an open line from a flight attendant on American 11. It's the only direct testimony we have from inside that plane.
And the core message she relays is just, it's brutal in its simplicity.
It is. The flight attendant says, quote, "The pilot, everyone's been stabbed."
Right.
And that they can't get into the cockpit. This confirms it. It was a violent breach.
And there were specific, awful details about the injuries.
Yeah, that's what's so grounding. The report says the number 5 flight attendant been stabbed, but she seems to be breathing. But then it gets worse. The number 1 flight attendant stabbed pretty badly, and she's lying down on the floor. It just paints this picture of targeted violence against the crew.
She also managed to identify where the attackers came from.
That's right. She says 2 individuals from first class, from seats 2A and 2B, are in the cockpit. So these were passengers who launched an assault from the front of the plane. A critical detail for understanding the security failure later on.
But there's this one tragic detail where she suggests the rest of the plane might not even know what's happening.
It's heartbreaking. She says the passengers this coach might not be aware of what's going on right now. The first-class cabin had been pushed back into coach, and they were desperately asking, is there a doctor on board?
Searching for a doctor in the middle of a hijacking.
It just sums up the absolute terror and confusion.
So American Airlines now knows this is a confirmed hijacking. They relay that to ATC. But what happens to that call?
The line goes dead. Tragically, they lose contact with the flight attendant while she's still talking. The dispatcher is on the transcript saying, "I think we might have lost her," just seconds before the air traffic controller loses the primary target, the blip, off the screen entirely.
And that happens at 8:46 a.m. ET, the moment the radar blip disappears.
Yes, about 20 miles west of Kennedy. And that's the moment this private crisis becomes a very public catastrophe. We pivot completely from the technical language of ATC to the chaos of live television.
Which brings us to phase 2, impact and escalation. 8:46 a.m., American 11 vanishes from radar, and almost instantly, the news reports begin.
Kennedy Tower reports a fire at the World Trade Center, and the networks immediately cut to that live shot of the North Tower, smoke pouring out of it.
And the anchors are just reeling. You can hear it in their voices. They're calling it a very disturbing live shot, relying on unconfirmed reports that a plane has crashed.
And the initial speculation, across the board, is that it was a small plane. They're trying to fit this horrifying event into a known category.
Right. An eyewitness named Stewart says it seemed to be like a small plane. Another, Jennifer Oberstein, just saw a big ball of fire. The human mind is just trying to shrink the event to make it make sense.
And the anchors are doing the same thing. They're talking about the size of the building, 10.5 million square feet, over 100 stories tall.
They're trying to contain the disaster intellectually, noting the plane went in one side and out the other, maybe affecting 10 floors. They're framing it as a terrible building fire, complicated by a plane crash.
But one anchor, Don Taylor, he voices this skepticism almost right away. He sees the scale of the damage and just doesn't buy the small plane theory.
Yeah, he says it had to be a gigantic explosion, and he openly questions if a small plane could cause that much damage.
And that's the first crack in the narrative. That's the moment someone in a position of authority realizes this doesn't fit any known category of accident.
And that doubt, that fracture in the story, becomes a total, sickening realization just minutes later. 9:03 a.m. ET. The second strike.
The transcript it captures the raw shock and anchors mid-sentence and then just yells, "Kids, something else just hit a very large plane. Another one just hit the building. Wow."
Wow.
You can just feel the air go out of the entire newsroom. And the live footage confirms it. It wasn't an accident.
Witnesses describe the second plane flying very deliberately into the South Tower.
Right. Elliot Walker says on air, it was flown very deliberately into the building. And then you get the question that changes everything. The anchor just asks, what are the odds of 2 separate planes hitting both towers?
And the answer is 0. It's not an accident, it's an attack.
It's a coordinated act of war. And air traffic control gets it instantly. One controller sees the second impact and says, that appeared to be at least a 727. And the decision is immediate. We're going to shut Boston down.
The beginning of the end for air travel that day.
It signals the start of the complete closure of U.S. airspace. And at the same time, American Airlines confirms it. American Oven, the Boston-LA flight, was hijacked. And now American 77, a Dulles to LA flight, is also missing.
2 planes, 2 airlines, 2 coasts, 2 iconic targets. The coordination is undeniable.
The focus then shifts again. The crisis explodes beyond New York City and lands squarely in Washington, D.C. This is Phase 3, the national scale of the attack.
Just before 9:45 a.m., the live pictures change. It's no longer just the towers. Now there's billowing smoke at the Pentagon.
Yeah, Jim Miklaszewski, NBC's correspondent there, reports hearing the explosion. And just like in New York, the first moments are pure confusion.
A bomb or a plane.
Exactly. The initial assumption from a U.S. Army officer on the scene was a bomb was dead. They thought it was an internal explosive. The idea that a commercial jet could be used as a missile against the Pentagon was just, it was too far outside their paradigm.
But the truth comes out quickly.
Very quickly, 9:43 a.m., fire is confirmed. Witnesses see the commercial aircraft hit the south side near the helipad, creating this large, gaping 50-foot hole.
And with the Pentagon hit, there is no more doubt.
None. The FBI officially reports foul play at the World Trade Center, and the entire federal government pivots from rescue to a national defense crisis.
Which puts the spotlight on President Bush, who was at an elementary school in Florida.
Right. Around 9:45 a.m., he steps up to a microphone at Emma Booker Elementary. He's clearly been briefed. He calls it a difficult moment for America, a national tragedy, and he's the first to officially label it an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
He also confirms he's in contact with the vice president, the FBI director. The government is in motion.
And he gives the order. Full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families. But more than that, he sets the tone for everything that's to come with that final line.
Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
And then he calls for a moment of silence. The transcripts note he was clearly shaken.
But while the president is setting the political and emotional tone, the FAA is making one of the most drastic logistical decisions in modern history.
The complete and total grounding of all U.S. airspace. It's almost impossible to comprehend the scale of this.
Let's break that down. What does shutting down the airspace actually mean?
Well, the easy part is ordering all takeoffs to stop. That's simple.
Right.
The hard part is the thousands of planes already in the air. They were all ordered to land immediately at the nearest suitable airport. It's an instant forced demobilization of the entire national and a good chunk of the international air fleet.
So you have huge international 747s being diverted to small airports in Canada.
Exactly. Domestic flights landing at regional airports that have never seen a plane that big. It's an unprecedented act done in minutes, all to prevent a 5th or 6th plane from being used as a weapon.
And they were actively hunting for that next plane, United 93.
The urgency was extreme. ATC gets a report that United 93, a flight from Newark to San Francisco, has a bomb on board. This is likely coming from the passengers themselves making those heroic phone calls.
You can see the controllers in the transcripts asking if the military has scrambled jets yet.
Yeah. And then, just after 10 a.m., they get a report of black smoke about 15 miles south of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. They speculate the aircraft hit the ground. The 4th plane was down.
And that immediate threat, that fear of another weaponized plane, leads to the most profound policy shift of the entire morning.
This is maybe the single most important detail in these operational transcripts. The region commander declares on an open channel that they can now shoot down aircraft that did not respond to our direction.
Let's just pause on that.
Yeah.
That's unthinkable before that morning.
It completely shatters decades of policy. The U.S. military did not shoot down civilian airliners over U.S. soil, period. That single declaration, made in the heat of battle, created an instant wartime reality. It authorized the military to kill American civilians in the air to prevent a greater slaughter on the ground.
That leap is the true measure of how the world changed in those 2 hours.
It is. And that terrifying new reality brings us to the apex of the devastation in New York. Phase 4. Collapse and catastrophe.
Around 9:59 a.m., just 56 minutes after it was hit, the South Tower collapses.
The live report from David Lee Miller is just stark. One of the 2 towers literally collapsed. An officer on the ground, Officer Gronowski, described the sound as an explosion followed by a rolling sound.
The transcripts focus on the aftermath, the atmosphere.
It's apocalyptic. The streets are instantly buried in paper and smoke. A huge cloud of billowing smoke and fire just barrels down the street. It's not just smoke, it's pulverized concrete, steel, everything. The air itself becomes a weapon.
And the potential loss of life was just unimaginable.
The Port Authority police estimated 10,000 people would be expected in each tower at that time of day. And the collapse took less than 15 seconds. The phrase, massive casualties, became the horrifying new reality.
Then, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower falls.
And the emergency response, which was already overwhelmed, is just completely crushed. Pat Dawson, reporting from 10 blocks away, says the dust cloud made it the 5 or 6 blocks up here.
He described seeing first responders?
Yeah, firemen, police officers just running, covered in ash, looking literally stunned in shock. They went from a rescue mission to a recovery mission to just survival, all in the space of an hour.
He also gives this really chilling structural analysis of the collapse.
He does. He describes how the structure fell down, then the steel skeleton was sheaved off, and then the skeleton itself collapsed. It just pancaked. The core of the building failed, and it just came straight down.
And the human toll is flooding the city's hospitals.
Bob Basil at St. Vincent's Hospital reports hundreds of wounded arriving.
Yeah.
People very badly burned, some already dead.
Cardinal Egan was on the street giving last rites.
Yeah. The hospitals are converting their cafeterias into triage centers just to handle the sheer volume of trauma.
And at the same time, the city's basic infrastructure is just gone.
Completely broken down. Cell phones are down, hard lines are down, subways are stopped, and all the bridges and tunnels are closed. Manhattan becomes an island prison of gridlock and dust.
And amidst all this chaos, the final, awful facts are confirmed.
By mid-morning, it's official. 4 flights are down.
Yeah.
American 11 and United 175 in New York. American 77 at the Pentagon. And United 93, which we now know crashed in Pennsylvania because the passengers fought back.
The question immediately shifts from what happened to who did this.
And the intelligence analysts immediately point to one name, Osama bin Laden. They talk about his signature, the coordinated attacks, the use of aircraft, the mass casualties.
They even mention his past plots, like one to blow up 13 airliners back in the 80s.
And this chilling detail comes out. The co-conspirators in the earlier embassy bombings trial already had pilot licenses. This plan had been in the works for years.
Which immediately brings up the question of intelligence failure.
A profound one. Congressman Porter Goss, who was the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, says it bluntly. There was no specific warning. He called it a complete breakdown in our airport security.
He has that quote, "America is a free, open, democratic society, and we pay a price for it."
That really captures the dilemma of that day. And while they're grappling with that, Washington goes on the highest possible alert.
Alert level Delta.
Meaning troops are deployed, ready for immediate action. And it's not just D.C. Major buildings across the country are evacuated. The Sears Tower, the Space Needle. The government clearly believes the attack might not be over.
So let's just step back. The speed of this whole thing is what's so hard to process.
It's vertigo-inducing. In the space of about 2 hours, from a normal morning to this, 2 towers gone, the Pentagon hit, 4 planes down, all U.S. airspace closed, borders sealed. It's a total paralysis of the country.
A former NYPD commissioner called it a well-planned, well-coordinated act. This wasn't random.
No. And the story that these transcripts tell is one of agonizing, escalating confusion. From a small plane accident to 2 planes to 3 to 4, and then the sickening realization that the towers themselves were actually coming down. Peter Arnett just called it a war zone.
The ordinary American Tuesday morning turned into a war zone.
In minutes. It was the morning the broadcast and the country shifted forever.
And that brings us back to that final provocative thought from the source material, that decision made in the heat of the moment.
That declaration from the region commander. The order that military aircraft could shoot down aircraft that did not respond.
A decision that just cut through decades of protocol in an instant.
Exactly. It wasn't a debate. It wasn't a memo. It was an existential choice made under fire. And we have to ask, what does that immediate leap, that willingness to sacrifice a civilian airliner to save a target on the ground reveal about the new calculus of national defense?
The moment the towers were hit, the enemy was now using our own infrastructure against us.
Precisely. And the military's response was to declare that our own domestic airspace was now a battlefield. That shift, the immediate normalization of the unthinkable, authorizing the military to shoot down a U.S. airliner over a U.S. city, that's the most profound and terrifying legacy of that morning.
It redefined the balance between liberty and security forever.
It did. And you, the listener, should really consider the weight of that decision. That one choice made on the fly, and how it set the stage for the next 20 years of American life.